Hey everybody, OTL Unite here. We are going to do a report actually on the Great Reset timeline. There's a couple things that have been eerily lining up. Again, we're not saying this timeline is necessarily 100% true, whether or not this is just a ploy by the elite to make us look foolish or not, but it's very, very strange, and a few of these things have lined up, and especially today I saw a report that we are going to include in this video that lines up with lines up to the timeline that we have going on here. So yeah, we're gonna kind of go through this step by step and see what happens. Okay, the first stop we're going to look at is the leaked email. It was leaked, I believe, on Rebel News. Don't quote me. But supposedly one of the MPs in the Liberal Party released some information that the government had a set plan on how this COVID-19 Great Reset thing would play out. And there was a set, dates. When this is going to happen around this time, this is going to happen around this time, this is going to happen around this time, so on and so forth. There have been some fighting. Of course, the mainstream media says, no, this is a fake ad, but there are some people, too, on the right who said, no, this is a legitimate. I'm not saying if it's legitimate or not. I'm just putting the information out there. It's my job to report the news, not make it. But there are some interesting, let's call them coincidences, you'll see as we are kind of moving forward. Okay, it says November 2020. Phase in secondary lockdown restrictions on a rolling basis, starting with major metropolitan areas first and expanding outward, expected by November 2020. They were already doing these restrictions in these major metropolitan areas: Toronto, Hamilton, Peel region, all the big areas. It was actually happening in the end of October, going into November, middle of November. There are so many video clips you guys are going to see when I'm done talking. And I also did screenshots too to show you the date that these restrictions were starting to roll, and as we see here on the timeline for November 2020.
Katie Nicholson is in Toronto, where Ontario reported 1,210 new cases of COVID-19 today, and the Premier warned some tough new restrictions are on their way. So, Katie, that announcement is coming tomorrow. What's the mood tonight?
Well, Adrian, here in Ontario, it feels like much of the province is holding its breath in anticipation of what's to come, and many are bracing for the worst.
Christmas is coming, and so are more restrictions. And for small retailers who depend on seasonal sales, it's going over like a lump of coal.
It's really, really scary.
Sam Carre is now trying to put her entire store inventory online ahead of the holiday rush and another possible lockdown.
It was so time consuming. It was a lot of work.
Tomorrow, our government will release further public health restrictions based on the best medical advice. And as it's looking, these measures, they will have to be tough.
The province is on the cusp of a critical threshold. Nearly 150 people with COVID-19 are in intensive care tonight. The province says if it spills over, it could threaten its ability to maintain adequate critical care services. ICU staff are already feeling the pressure.
The teams are tired. And people are stressed.
In COVID hotspots like Peel region west of Toronto, tacit understanding things need to change.
Some sort of pause is needed to at least reduce interactions and bring our case numbers down.
Whatever that pause entails, the province is signaling it won't include school closures.
The safest place for our children right now are actually in the schools.
That leaves retailers like Carre feeling even more vulnerable.
I need to be here to be able to make my business survive.
I'm actually worried about you because of everything that's going on. So treats for your staff.
A reminder, no matter what tomorrow brings, we're all in this together.
So, Katie, the Premier Doug Ford called out the rule breakers today. What is the province actually doing about that, though?
It is stepping up enforcement, sending about 200 inspectors out into the community to crack down on what it calls bad actors.
Okay, Katie Nicholson at Queen's Park. Thanks, Katie.
Just want to quickly jump back in for a minute. I could find videos and news articles talking about COVID-19 backlogs happening in October, and I could find the same thing for December, but I could not find anything for November. But I'm going to assume if there was a backlog happening before November and there was a backlog happening after November, then there most definitely was a backlog of COVID tests happening during November.
A much shorter line for testing today. Across Ontario, COVID tests are now by appointment only.
This is so much better. Amazing, so much better. Yeah. And it was so nice to be able to book a spot, and especially when you have a little one.
But there's confusion. The province just announced the change on Friday afternoon, and today some testing centers are closed. This couple didn't have an appointment and gets turned away. The province wants to end the hours of waiting at testing centers and cut the backlog at labs. That's now at almost 79,000.
All right, the next one, December 2020, rusty acquisition and construction of isolation facilities across every province and territory expected by 2020. This one's kind of interesting because they were talking about this in September, October, but this does say by December, so I guess I'll give this person that. But yeah, people were told that they were conspiracy theorists for believing these facilities would be up. But now it's knowledge that they are up. I mean, I've been to one myself. Like, I went there to visit it and seen the fencing around the Radisson in Toronto, the police, the security, the tents in the back, the buses going to retrieve people from the Toronto airport. So these places are real. I'm mostly focusing on Ontario right now as I'm doing this report, but there are facilities up in different provinces. The reports are coming out. And as more and more people get forced to go to them, the locations of each facility will become public knowledge eventually.
Oh, absolutely, Cynthia. Almost a year into the pandemic now, and Brampton, one of the hardest hit cities in the country, will finally be getting 2 isolation centers, and we're being told that they will be opening soon. This comes after Mayor Patrick Brown spent months pressing Ottawa for the funding.
I had previously expressed frustration that the federal government had funded isolation centers in Mississauga and Toronto.
COVID cases in Peel Region continue climbing at an alarming rate. For every 100,000 residents, 279 are now testing positive, pushing the region's positivity rate to 16.7%, a number that is considered very high. And Brampton alone makes up 61% of those infections.
We too often forget that COVID-19 is a disaster, much like a hurricane. Like a hurricane, the death and devastation are real, and the need for supports and impacted businesses and individuals is absolutely crucial.
With isolation centers already operating in Toronto and Mississauga, federal funding is finally trickling down to Brampton, a city that is full of essential workers.
All right, the next one is early January 2021. The complete and total secondary lockdown, much stricter than the first and second rolling phase restrictions, expected by the end of December 2020, early January 2021. And again, we all know in Ontario that the province was locked down on Boxing Day, the end of December 2020. I guess I'll include a video on here as well. Doug Ford announcing his lockdown and stay-at-home orders, which again, much stricter than the first time.
Well, good afternoon. Effective immediately, Ontario is declaring a state of emergency. We expect this to remain in place for at least 28 days. Further, I'm issuing a stay-at-home order effective Thursday at 12:01 a.m. Under this order, everyone must stay home and only go out for essential trips to pick up groceries or go to medical appointments.
Okay, February 2021. This is actually one of the reasons why OTL Unite wanted to make this video, because we saw this news briefing today and it sent off alarm bells. So February 2021 says projected COVID-19 mutation and or co-infection with secondary virus, referred to as COVID-21, leading to a third wave with much higher mortality rate and higher rate of infection expected by February 2021. Today is February the 2nd, 2021, and I just saw two videos from the news, both released on the exact same day, both talking about this so-called new COVID-19 mutation, this new variant. Both released on the same day, guys. I guess we'll have to keep watching February and seeing what else they're going to talk about. But we knew this variant was going to come because they have been hinting at it. But now they're actually more out in the open talking about this new COVID variant. Whether or not they're going to call it COVID-21 or not, I guess time will tell. But here's the video. Have a watch.
Dr. Jennifer Russell had warned it was coming soon.
Well, that day has arrived, and we can confirm now that there is the UK variant of COVID-19 in our province.
How serious is it? She says for most of January, New Brunswick saw 567 cases of COVID. If the variant first reported in the UK had been present, even by a low estimate, that would have put the province at just over 1,000 cases. By the end of this month, more than 6,000.
And if this strain, when the strain gets into our population, it'll be very difficult to get ahead of it and stay ahead of it.
In other provinces, the problem is further advanced, like Ontario.
This is the classic case of the horses out of the barn. It's here. It's been here probably for weeks or perhaps even longer, and it's transmitting within the community.
In Alberta, the variant first reported by the UK could take over by March 7th, predicts this researcher.
Even if we don't reopen, basically if we don't make restrictions more strict, then the variant will become dominant.
Federal public health officials acknowledge there are more variant cases in Canada than are being detected. They say the screening process is still being ramped up.
Canada is testing for variants more than other countries, but we can definitely improve on that.
Nationally, officials say about 5% of COVID cases are being tested for variants. The goal is to double that, up to 10%, and get faster results. But the improvements are expected to take weeks. But the ways to stop any version of the virus haven't changed. Follow public health restrictions.
I think the message is really hang on in there for a bit longer.
Vigilance and caution, she says, are key. Catherine Cullen, CBC News, Ottawa.
You had 39 variants of concern in York Region. We broke them down into households, and there are 24 households. Out of those, 6 households had acquired it from travel abroad, so they're travel associated.
All right, now that the news is talking about this new variant and how it's spreading throughout Canada, we see that, again, whoever put this together, the information is accurate. The timing could be slightly off, but it's always saying by this time this should happen. So far I'm not seeing any discrepancies so far. But the next step is during the first quarter of 2021, there's going to be reform and expansion of the unemployment program to be transitioned into the Universal Basic Income Program, expected by the first quarter of 2021. Okay, guys, the first quarter ends April 3rd. So basically, we should see the Basic Income Program be born by April 3rd. So between now and April 3rd. So if this thing is right, basically what we're going to see is the news will begin to start focusing more and more on the new variant. And again, that's why OTL made this video, because we saw both of these news briefings post up on the exact same day, both talking about the new variant. So again, we should see, now that it's February, them start focusing on the new variant, and that's going to be the headlines. The new variant, it's spreading, it's much worse than the first one. Is the vaccine going to work? Is it not going to work? But anywho, they're going to be focusing on this new variant. And then between that and April 3rd, we should see a basic income program blossom up. But yeah, again, is this legit? Is this not legit? Not sure. But as we've seen, this trend is continuing. And whoever made this, whoever leaked this out, they seem to be quite accurate.